If you have a Tacoma, I'm sure you're looking at all the forums trying to find the best in aftermarket automotive lighting. It's an off-road vehicle, and at Headlight Revolution, we've done the work for you. In this video, we're going to show you how to mount the 4Bangers from Morimoto on the A-pillar brackets. Then we're going to show you how to mount them in the fog lights. So follow us, let's get started. First things first, there's two pod lights that you need to be aware of. The entry level, which Morimoto calls the NCS pod, they use Nichia chips and it's super bright, has the same beam pattern as their higher end model, the HXB or HX Boost. They use an OSRAM chip. Those things are stupid bright. And if you get the beam pattern that is a white wide version, it is the brightest one that we have ever tested here at Headlight Revolution. Now the NCS and the HXB both come in three different beam patterns. They have the wide beam pattern, they have a combo beam pattern, and they have a spotlight beam pattern. All three beam patterns are great, however the one that decimates all is the wide version. 80% or more of our customers buy the white wide version, so that is definitely something to consider, especially if you're going to mount it in something like a fog light. Now if you want to see how these pod lights stack up against the rest of the competitors out there, Chris Nelson does an in-depth review where he compares these against Style Dynamics, Rigid Industries, and so on. So if you want to see how we came to the conclusion of these being the best, be sure to watch that video. Now all of these pod lights and all the driving beam patterns come with either an amber version or a white version. So the higher end OSRAM chips that are used in the HXB 4Bangers, those are a more yellow look. And when you use the NCS 4Bangers, they look a little bit more amber. That's because the NCS uses those Nichia chips. And Nichia chips, they do come in a yellow, whereas the OSRAM chips do not come in a yellow. One thing to note, in all of our testing, the amber versions always came in slightly less than the white versions. That's because the light passing through that yellow lens, it loses a little bit of its luminosity. Since the NCS chip, that entry-level 4Banger, uses a yellow chip passing through the yellow lens, it doesn't quite lose as much lumens. So that is something to consider. Now as far as street legalities go, that NCS chip, if you do mount it at a -3-degree aim, it does become compliant with the latest SAE F3 regulations. Unfortunately, the HXB is not street legal because it's so dang bright. And it's up to you to decide what's more important for your build. Now, what about the reliability? With all of the testing that we have done so far, we have not had any issues. They have an IP69K rating, which means they're totally waterproof. Also, they have a limited lifetime warranty, so they've got to be pretty good. As far as dimming down goes, when you guys are driving at over 4.5 miles an hour, you actually don't lose as much loss of light as you will see in some of our testing or in our other videos. So be sure to note that they don't actually lose but 8% of the brightness when you're driving over 4.5 miles per hour. The last thing to note about these 4Bangers real quick is that they have about a 30% smaller footprint than that of all of the competitors out there. So if you're mounting them in, say, one of the custom brackets on the front bumper in any of your vehicles, they're going to fit so much better, like an OEM Plus look. So now that you've decided that the Morimoto 4Banger is right for your Tacoma, let's get to the install.
So first things first, all we have to do is add this adjustment bracket to the 4Banger. You'll be removing the two bottom screws. Once those are removed, then you'll be replacing them with the longer screws that are in the kit. Now when placing your adjustment bracket on there, it only can go one way. You will see there is some grooves on the very front side of it, and it will line up with your 4Banger perfectly. And be careful not to over tighten these screws as well. Now that you have that assembled, all you have to do is put your 4Banger into your bracket. Best way, it dives in just slightly, and you'll hear that slight click, and you know it's in there. Next, you'll be taking the two screws that are available in the kit and you'll be placing them in the side holes right here. Next, we're going to go ahead and install the adjustment screw. This will allow you to adjust your 4Bangers vertically once it's installed. Now, all that you have left is to go ahead and use the accessory harness that came in your kit and plug it up to your 4Banger. This harness will allow your 4Banger to be a full plug and play for your fog lights. Okay, now that we're down here by the fog light, we're going to go ahead and get the OEM one out and removed. First things first, you're going to be removing a 10 mil and also one here. This does have an aftermarket bumper, so it doesn't have one, but just keep in mind if you do have an OEM bumper. Next, you'll be removing this plastic push pin right here. You can use a wedge tool to get it up and out. And once you have that out, you can just tuck this black plastic piece up and out of the way, giving you clearance to your OEM fog light. Now that you have your OEM fog light visible, You're gonna go ahead and start by disconnecting the OEM harness and then take out the 2 side screws on the very side of it. Once those are removed, you now then can just wedge the OEM fog light up and out. When installing your 4Banger, there is an indication on if it is a left or right bracket. All you have to do is look on the very side and see if it is a L or R, and then you can continue with your install. So the 4Banger installs just like the OEM. Just slide it into place, take those 2 OEM screws, tighten them down, and then plug in your OEM harness and you're good to go. All right, now that we have the fog light replacements installed, we're gonna go ahead and move up to the A-pillars for the 4Bangers. We're gonna go ahead and start with the harness. First things first, we're gonna go ahead and mount the relay. Make sure you mount this vertically so there's no water intrusion later on once you got everything installed. So we're gonna be mounting our relay in these factory holes right here. Of course, you can mount it wherever you would like. You can use dip ties, whichever your preference is, but we're gonna go this route. Okay, next up, you're gonna be taking the rest of your harness. There is 2 sides. There's a light 1 and a light 2. We're gonna be running the light 1 up to the driver's side of the 4Banger. And then light 2, it actually comes with an extension harness, just so we can make sure that the harness gets over to the number 2 4Banger. So we're just gonna take the harness and we're just gonna route it over to the other side. You can tuck this in however you would like. My recommendation is zip tying it to the body harness, just up and out of the way and keeping it nice and clean. Morimoto came in clutch with the Morimoto switch already connected to your harness. So there's 2 different ways. You could either use a step bit and actually drill into your firewall and use the provided grommet that we have on the harness, or you can route it alongside your OEM cab harness. And that's what we're gonna do here today as well. So the Morimoto switch is on a barrel connector, so you can disconnect it and run it through a small hole. We're just gonna route it right through here, and we'll meet you guys on the inside. So now that you have your harness ran through your firewall, I'm going to show you how to install your switch. On this vehicle, we're not actually going to be installing it because this is a customer's vehicle, but to show you, when doing your switch, make sure whenever you're installing it, you can install it anywhere in the cab you like, but make sure that there's no metal or plastic interfering with the actual switch. So when installing your Morimoto switch, all you have to do is take off this locking nut right here and just feed it up and off of the harness. When installing your switch, all you have to do is drill out a 3/4 inch hole with a step bit or drill bit. Well, now that you have it drilled out, you'll basically just route your harness up through that hole area and pull the switch through. And then you'll be using that lock nut and feed it back up through the harness and make sure it's nice and cinched down. And once that's done, you will then just reconnect it with that barrel connector and then just tuck your harness up and nice and neat and you're good to go. Okay, now that we have the harness ran, it's time to install the A-pillar bracket. You might need an extra hand when it comes to this, so just keep that in mind. First things first, what we're gonna do is go ahead and get some tape. This allows you to line it up to make sure whenever you reinstall the bolts that your hood is lined up properly, and that way you don't get that weird gappage on the side. So we're just gonna take the tape and put it on the side just like so. And you're just gonna take a permanent marker and just mark a line, just the general area where those screw holes are at. And then take a razor blade and then just cut right down the center. And then you can just line those up at the very end. Before you actually install the full A-pillar onto the truck, you need to go ahead and mount up your U-bracket onto your A-pillar bracket. So you'll be taking your U-bracket, make sure that it is facing forward, the C part is facing forward. You then will drop the bolt in place, take the washer and put it underneath, and then screw it in place and tighten it down. So you'll be tightening the nut down with a 17mm. Keep in mind, don't tighten this down all the way just yet, so you can adjust your 4Banger's aim once it's installed. So there's a plastic piece that comes in with your A-pillar kit. This will allow you to tuck your harness against your A-pillar, so it makes it nice and clean when doing your 4Banger A-pillar install. All right, now for this part, go ahead and grab your friend to help you hold the hood in place so it doesn't fall onto your windshield. We're gonna go ahead and start removing this very front bolt and the back one also. Now be very careful when installing your 4Banger A-pillar. This is metal and it will damage if you do not install it properly. So you'll just run the A-pillar in between the windshield and hood, and it'll be placed on the very bottom side. You'll use your OEM bolts and just tighten it back down. We'll go ahead and start with this front one real fast, and make sure to use your tape for good guidelines to make sure that your hood is lined up just like it was before. Now, when installing your 4Bangers into your A-pillar bracket, you'll be using the 2 screws that are provided in with your kit. So all you have to do is place your 4Banger in place, just like so, and then screw those on the very side. So this will help you adjust your 4Banger's vertical aim. Now you'll be taking your Deutsch connectors and plugging them into your 4Banger on the driver and passenger side. So finally, all we have to do is connect to the battery. So go ahead and remove the bolt for your negative, and then place our ground part on it and tighten that down. And then go ahead and take the screw off on the positive and do the same exact thing and tighten that down as well. Now all you have to do is go ahead and test out your 4Bangers and tidy up any loose wiring.
So as you can see, it's not that hard to install some off-road lighting on the Tacoma. But why would you stop at just the pod lights? Have you seen these headlights that are on this truck right behind me? These are the Morimoto hybrid version headlights. They're super bright. Go to headlightrevolution.com, type in your year, make, and model on your Tacoma to find all the other headlights and off-road LED products that we offer for your truck.